So around a year ago I made a settings video where I kinda went over the settings I preferred at the time and why I enjoyed them. The video was essentially just a here is what I use video, but you guys seem to enjoy it. So today I thought we should go a step further. Over the past year I've used a huge variety of different camera and controller settings, ranging from standard, pretty close up, pretty far away, and some different variations of sensitivities and dead zones, and now I think I have a solid understanding of the differences and when you might want to look at changing a few things. So we're going to look at the settings a little more in depth, talk about why you might want to use one over the other and what they each help with. With this being my last video of the year, I just want to say thank you all so much for the support over the last 12 months. At the time making this, we're sitting on about 185,000 subs, which is absolutely incredible. For those of you who have subbed this year, thank you so much for your support. If you're new to the channel, I hope you enjoyed the content, and if you do, consider subbing to not miss out on the weekly uploads. Now, I'm going to break down what everything does and how it affects your settings, and then explain 3 of the complete setting states that I recommend if you're looking to change things up. So first up, we're going to look into your camera settings. When you first start the game, your camera looks like this. This is its default state. Now, while people might feel that this works pretty well for them, I really recommend changing it up and testing out a few different camera variations to find something that fits your style a little better. So, jumping into the menu, you are first given the option to turn camera shake off. You should do this. All it does is shake your camera and make things a little harder to see. Next up is field of view. Now, while the default starts you off at 90, if you've ever looked into anyone's camera settings, they will most likely have it sitting between 100 and 110. 110 is by far the most popular among high-level players, but I've seen 1 or 2 sitting closer to the 100 mark. By turning your FOV up, you gain a wider perspective of the field and allow yourself to take in more information while keeping your camera the same distance from your car. I know some players, especially the 1v1 players, like to sit around the 107 mark so that the ball is a little bigger on the screen to give them cleaner touches, but the best thing to do is go through the rest of the settings with this one set at 110 and then come back later to readjust it depending on how it feels with the finished result. Distance is pretty simple. Increasing the distance will pull the camera further back from your car, and dropping the distance will cause the camera to move closer. This does get an outside influence when you include the stiffness setting, but we get to that a little later on. Now, the distance setting is one that I've messed with a lot this last year. Most players sit between around 260 to the 280 mark because it puts them far enough away to see a good amount of the field, but not too far that you have trouble being able to accurately hit the ball. You see, if you're sitting too far away like this, you can often find your touches on the ball to be less accurate due to you not being able to see exactly where you're hitting. Whereas, if you have a close distance like this, you're able to be much more precise with your touches. I've been using around 260 for a while, but have now settled on about 240, which seems very close. But like I said, with the stiffness setting, it can come into play and change a few things up, so I will explain my choice when we get there. However, for a safe bet, I suggest using the 270 while you're starting off and then adjusting to see what you like. Next is height. This, again, is fairly simple. Increase this and your camera moves up, decrease this and it goes down. The only 3 settings that I see people actually use are 90 to 110. Anything higher and you start to lose track of where you are underneath the ball, and any lower and it becomes difficult to track positioning still. So this 90 to 110 area is really a good sweet spot. And even then, I still don't really see many people trying to use the 110. So when first trying to find a setting that works for you, look at either 100 or 90, depending on whether or not you're more comfortable being able to see that little bit extra over the ball for situations like 1v1s or 50-50s, or if you're happy with the height set to 90s, you can be more face onto the ball. Angle is up next, and in my opinion, there are only 3 different angles you should use. And I'm pretty sure through research, these are the only ones 99% of the community uses as well. And that is between -3 and -5. Essentially, all this does is change the angle that your camera is looking at the car, but when you join these with the FOV, height, and distance, you start to work them together to get the look you're going for. For example, if you wanted to drop your height to 90, you could try using an angle of -5 to make up for the lack of height, and still slightly be looking over the ball. And if you want to use 100 or 110 height, you can move the angle closer to -3 to give yourself a balanced out camera. While this is one of the more complicated ones, you will pretty much only be going through either -3, -4, or -5, and they can be changed around depending on what you prefer with your other settings. So I'll give you a few preset camera settings to test out and modify at the end of this. Stiffness is kind of the most important setting out of all of these, as, like I've mentioned, it directly has an effect on each of the other ones. Now at the bottom, you will see it says that stiffness controls how rigidly your camera follows your car, but it also impacts a few other things as well. With the lower stiffness setting, as you begin to accelerate and make your way around the field, your camera will begin to move further away from your car. Then as you slow down, your camera will move back towards its original position. Then, when turning, the lower stiffness setting means your car will move further to the side of the center of the screen, moving further away from the starting position. So, as I'm sure you can imagine, moving this all the way towards the higher end of the stiffness setting means that your car will stay more centered on the screen throughout all movements. Dathomir is known for many things, one of which being the 1.00 stiffness, which he used for so long because having your car constantly in the center of the screen allowed him to have an easier time reading the movements and not being thrown off or losing track of the car's placement on the field during transitions to the wall, into the air, or just through quick turns. With this being a very crucial setting, a lot of people like to sit around 0.45 to 0.55, which doesn't cause the car to move too far out in front of the camera while accelerating, but also allows for some wiggle room so that it doesn't become so static. Then again, some people might like that. This one is really down to choice and how you choose the rest of your settings. The last two aren't really that important. Swivel speed is just how quickly the camera will pan around while you move the right analog stick to check around the field. Some people put it high to get information quickly, and some people have it low to get a more accurate look at everything. And your transition speed is just how fast you move between your ball and car cam. I suggest not really adjusting this too much. Then there's inverted swivel, which you can use if you're used to that setting in other games, essentially pushing down to look up and up to look down. So with that wrapping up this tab, let's have a look at the 3 camera settings I've used the most this year and the ones I recommend to you. The first one is the one I'm currently using, which is quite close to my car. I found recently that I've been having some trouble with my touches and not being as precise as I'd like to be. So I tried bringing the camera in a little bit and have seen success with this decision. It does limit your view of the field, but it is something you can definitely work with. On the opposite side of this are some of my older camera settings where everything is further away. This was a time where I played a lot more 3v3s and felt I hadn't developed a good sense of other players on the field, and so relied on being able to see a bit more to take it all in. This can be a really good camera setting to try out if you're having trouble tracking teammates. However, you will lose some accuracy with your touches. Lastly, we have a really nice middle ground that you can use at any time and is one that I strongly suggest to everyone if they just want to change things up. It's a pretty common camera choice by many players and provides you with a good bit of everything. Those are my 3 go-tos for camera settings, and now while I can't really give you a suggestion for controller settings, I want to quickly dive into them and explain something I've been messing around with. So, with aerial and steering sensitivities, they refer to how sensitive the car is at turning and rotating while you're in the air or on the ground. I recently found out there is apparently a big difference with how sensitive the game is on PC compared to Xbox, PS4 and the Switch. On PC, players might use something like 1.3 for both, which is fairly standard. However, on console, many prefer a high sensitivity like 2.3 or 2.5, and that way it still feels similar to the PC settings. This is a personal preference thing, and it completely comes down to how sensitive you would like your tuning to be in the air and on the ground. Now, the main thing I want to talk about in this section is the controller dead zone and what I've found. I always saw that high-level players were using the 0.05 for their controller dead zone, as this is often the sweet spot for not having stick drift, but also remaining quite sensitive to your analog stick inputs. So I would always stick around this for my controller dead zone. But more recently, I found that a lot of the freestylers in the community have a much higher dead zone, sitting between 0.20 and 0.45. This means they will have to move their analog stick further to have the same input, but it also means that their car will not have the small sensitive movements while trying to adjust in the air. What I have found is by using a higher sensitivity, even though I'm not going for freestyle clips, your general play, control, and touches will get much more consistent and you have less of those completely spinning out of control moments. It takes some getting used to, yes, but if you feel that you are comfortable working with a higher dead zone, I seriously suggest trying it out and seeing the difference it makes to your gameplay. You, like me, might find that you prefer the solid and less sensitive setting over the faster feeling one. Lastly, we have your dodge dead zone. This controls how much you will need to move your analog stick in order to input a dodge in any given direction. For example, a really low setting will mean you only need to really move the analog stick a slight amount to flip that way, and a really high one will mean you have to push it all the way to one side to flip. This is worth looking into if you find yourself backflipping constantly while trying to fast aerial or just make your way into the air. So with that all wrapped up, these are my current controller settings and the end of this video. If you are after my bindings, there is a video linked in the description. Hope you guys enjoyed, and seeing as this is going to be released on Christmas for a lot of you and will be my last video for the year, once again I just want to say thank you all for your support this year, and I hope you all have an amazing holiday, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I have a lot of exciting plans for content for 2021 and I hope to see you there. Anyway, that's all from me. I'll see you next time.